Prosecutors will use tricks to put you behind bars. So we'll ask a former state prosecutor, who's now switched over to the bright side of a criminal defense attorney.
So says the cop.
There we go. What are the tricks, Tom? What are the tricks that prosecutors are going to use to put people behind bars?
Yeah. Well, look, I'll save the biggest one for last. But with that out of the way, one of the big ones is it's not really a trick so much as it is just what I see day in and day out, which is someone gets into trouble or they're suspected of trouble. The cops go up to them and they say, they kind of size them up and down. They're like, look, just help me out. Just give me, explain what's going on. And, there's all sorts of different rules and this and that as far as.
This is your chance to help yourself.
Exactly. Look, I'll make this go really easy with the prosecutor. And keep in mind, cops are allowed to lie to you about just about everything. There's a couple things they're not allowed to lie to you about, but for the most part, they're allowed to lie to you about things. So if a police officer lies to you and gets some sort of confession or statement, which the prosecutor can then we'll say maybe creatively use, or and sometimes they don't have to do that. Very oftentimes, most times they don't have to do that, because while people think they're talking themselves out of a situation, they're really just talking themselves into jail time, prison time, or probation or something like that. But look, you have to be extraordinarily careful if you're going to decide to play the game of I'm going to be talking to the police, because focusing back once more on the prosecutors are going to be hammering you with that. Over a decade ago, when I was a state prosecutor, I would informally estimate at the time that maybe as high as 90% of my cases I could probably prove either significantly or entirely based off statements.
Statements from the arrested individuals.
Right.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's quite interesting that you put the number that high.
It's very high. Now, keep in mind, I wasn't in a major metropolitan area. I was in a very large suburb of a major metropolitan area. So it could be that if I was in a different area, whether it's colored more rural or colored more urban, those numbers may radically go up and down, right? But in the area where I was, for the most part, it's a lot of repeat customers, all that kind of stuff. And usually those people wise up to the fact of, well, talking to the cops got me convicted the last 8 times. Maybe I should take a different course.
But first, we have a super secret giveaway going on right now that you can enter for free, but it ends really soon. Just click the link in the description below to reveal what it is. And here's a hint. It's gun-shaped. Let's get back to the other tricks that prosecutors can use, Tom.
So saving the biggest one for last, but I'll move to the second one, which can be extraordinarily frustrating for clients and folks in the criminal justice system, which is the fact that prosecutors will use the rules of evidence, and defense attorneys do it too, but prosecutors will absolutely use the rules of evidence to try to hold out the problems in their case. So for instance, if they've got some sort of precious snowflake victim in some sort of gun case or some sort of self-defense case, i.e., let's say I have the righteous good guy as the defense attorney, and they've got the 10-time loser who's been on probation, in and out of prison his whole life. Obviously, my client says, well, great. The fact that he's spent more years in prison than out, and he's 40 right now, I mean, the jury's going to be able to hear about that, right? No. Really good chance they're not. I mean, maybe they'll catch a whiff of it, but they're definitely not going to hear the whole thing.
And is that because all of his prior actions didn't lead up to this or didn't cause this most recent action? Is that why we do this?
Yes. I mean, basically, the way that the rules of evidence are shaped is we're supposed to be trying each fact and each incident kind of in and of itself.
Okay.
Now, there can be ways how either reputations, prior criminal convictions, and so forth can come in and the jury can hear about it, sometimes in very low resolution detail, sometimes in somewhat higher resolution detail. But the bottom line remains the fact that they're not going to be able to hear the whole thing, and that can be really difficult. Because if I've got a righteous good guy who's never been in trouble in his or her entire life, and they have this notion that the justice system, if I do everything right, is going to be on my side, and suddenly they're like, wait, the guy's been in and out of prison. The jury doesn't even get to hear that. I'm going to be basically put on the same level as that guy. Yeah. Wow. Welcome to my day. All right. Last and most is definitely prosecutors overcharging cases. And to be
Okay.
clear, I'm by no means suggesting that every single prosecutor does this, or even that the majority of prosecutors do this, but there are absolutely, positively prosecutors who do this. All right, their proportion in district attorney's offices, maybe there's almost none in one office, and maybe the next office will have just a huge number of them because there's a culture, and that's just the way the young prosecutors are trained. But when I say overcharging a case, if you were to take a bunch of seasoned people from the justice system, judges, prosecutors, criminal defense attorneys, and if we were to give them kind of these one-page fact patterns, okay, here's what this guy's accused of doing, just make things up, right? Odds are good that when it comes to all right, what should this person be charged with? There's going to be kind of a mainstream range of like, okay, here's the spectrum of like, you could charge them with this. These are kind of the very, very safe charges. You could probably push it to here. But I assure you, there's going to be some people who are going to go, no. You could absolutely charge, that reckless as a homicide. You can absolutely charge, this thing as that thing, and overcharging the cases. And as a result, maybe my client is now facing decades behind bars instead of a more reasonable charge to fit their fact pattern. May have been, some misdemeanors. Now all of a sudden they're facing a felony. Why is that relevant? Well, aside from the fact that maybe now they're facing decades behind bars as opposed to years of jail, and both of those are, if we have an innocent person, absolutely unacceptable. But the problem is that a good guy, quite often, not all the times, but a good guy quite often will have a very different risk profile than a lot of the normal people in the justice system. A good guy is going to say, look, I've got kids, I've got obligations and responsibilities that I just can't take a 6-month or 1-year hiatus for in jail.
Yeah.
Like, I can't do that, right? But I absolutely cannot do a 3-year, 5-year, 10-year hiatus either, right? So the risk profile oftentimes can lead them, depending upon the individual, to become much more risk adverse than somebody who, for whatever reason, may be much more risk tolerant. So if you're much more risk adverse, again, going back to that person who's, let's say they're 50 years old, they've got kids in high school, they're married, they've got a great career, and they shot someone in self-defense, and it's, look, what the prosecutor's offering you is if you go to trial and lose, you're probably going to do 10, 20 years prison, or you can eat these felony or misdemeanor charges, and they're offering you 6 months jail with 5 years probation or something like that. One of those ends the game.
Yeah.
It ends the game that you're playing.
You make it all
life.
go away.
Yeah. Right. The other one is this is going to be absolutely awful and it's going to be extraordinarily destructive, but my life isn't over. I can get out and keep moving on.
Yeah.
So prosecutors have an extraordinary amount of power in our justice system. Realistically, judges, juries, and defense attorneys, to one level or another, all serve as checks on the discretion that we as a society knowingly empower prosecutors with. And there's many, many, many wonderful prosecutors who take that responsibility extraordinarily seriously, and they understand that even coming out with criminal charges themselves can be life-destroying for many folks. And there's other people, unfortunately, at the other end of that prosecutorial spectrum who are extraordinarily just hyper-aggressive, cavalier, casual. They will overcharge, and it can get extraordinarily ugly for some very good people very quickly.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for the insight, Tom. Very helpful for the people who are watching and folks who want to carry a gun responsibly. So I truly appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Kevin.
It's a true story of self-defense. We interviewed an armed Lyft driver who was carjacked to help answer these questions. Should I carry a gun while driving? And what does a carjacking actually look like? Just click the video next to me to watch this must-see interview.